When I first started my Airbnb business, I made loads of mistakes at the beginning that, honestly speaking, cost me so much time and money. And I always say I'd probably be way further than I am now along my journey had I done things correctly from the beginning. So I wanted to make this video to basically explain some of the top mistakes that I made and how you can avoid them yourself. So whether or not you're starting from scratch or you've got 1 or 2 units and you're looking to scale, you can avoid these along your journey and ultimately have a much more smoother process. So let's just dive straight into it. So the first one is just taking on any deal because you can. When you're first starting in rent to rent or in property, the biggest thing at the beginning is you just want to take on properties. You want to acquire new deals. It's almost like a vanity metric to say you've got 5 properties, 2 properties, 10 properties, whatever it is. So what you can end up falling into a trap of is just taking on any property because you can. But that's going to lead to an issue because not every single property deal is a good deal. And for me, I learned this the hard way. So I took on a lot of properties in Bradford. And I'm sorry to say, if anyone watching is from Bradford, your place is a shithole. Like, I'm from Croydon myself, so hasn't always got the best reputation for being a good area, but Bradford is on a whole nother level. Like, week after week, prostitutes, parties, drugs, people damaging the place. Like, the keys were always going missing. I can't tell you the amount of times we've changed the locks on those apartments in Bradford. Like, we probably had the locksmith's number on speed dial. I probably sent him like £2,000 in total. Like, this guy's making a killing from us because we were just always changing the keys. People were stealing stuff. And it was just, property deals like this are just not worth the headache that they cause. Like, unless you're making thousands and thousands of pounds profit every month, no one wants to be dealing with any issues like that with your Airbnb. So for me, one of the biggest learning curves was taking on properties in bad locations or taking on any deal because you can, even though it may lead to you getting problematic guests. So that could also translate into the quality of your property as well. Maybe it's a slightly lower quality property, you got it cheaply, the landlord was a little bit desperate to rent it out, so we gave it to use as an Airbnb, but because it's such a bad quality property, you've got to drop the prices to get people in, and low prices attract low quality guests. And then again, you're going to get issues leading to parties, prostitutes, all things like that. So yeah, that was a big lesson, taking on properties in bad locations. I'll see if I can even put in a clip. I remember one time these kids booked the property, and instead of using the fob to get through the front door of the building, they decided to kick it down. They literally smashed through the front door of the building. The maintenance team were trying to give us a bill for like £600 or £1,000 or something. So it was a whole load of mess. So that's the first one, taking on deals in bad locations or any deal just because you can. Which kind of leads me on to my second point, which is not taking damage deposits from guests. So when you're operating a short-term rental, when you're operating an Airbnb, it's important that you take damage deposits from your guests so that way, if they were to steal anything goes missing, anything gets damaged, you can claim it back from them. If you don't do this, you're pretty much just leaving yourself unprotected because someone could literally come in, steal your TV or take your Wi-Fi router, which we had in Bradford, or rip the bed sheets, stain something, and there's no way of you charging people back for it. So ultimately, you absorb that cost and it's expenses getting taken from your bottom line. So you need to be taking damage deposits from all of your guests who come through your property. And that was a mistake that I made because at the beginning, you think, oh, it's too much work to go out my way to start collecting deposits from people. Also, maybe guests are going to have a little bit of friction. They don't want to do it. I personally wouldn't want to pay a deposit when I'm checking in. But that's the wrong mindset and wrong attitude to have. Because yeah, you might be able to operate for 3-4 months perfectly fine. Every guest is cool. But you'll get that one time that everything will be vandalized and then you're going to be left out of pocket, and it may potentially cost you £2,000 to bring the property back up to the standard and get it repaired. So it's not worth it. Prevention is better than cure. Therefore, take a deposit, because when people pay a deposit as well, they're more likely to treat the property better because they know they've had to pay that out and they want to get it back at the end of their stay. So they often treat the property a little bit better. It serves as like twofold. You'll get better quality guests and it also just protects yourself. So that was the second biggest mistake I made, was not taking deposits from guests. Now, the third thing is not doing enough due diligence and checks on a property before you actually take it on. So this point is kind of twofold. On the one hand, you've got the checks you need to do on the property from like a maintenance perspective to ensure it's in a good enough condition. Because what you don't want to do is take on a deal, you sign contracts, and then a week or two later, you start realizing there's lots of issues with the property. There's loads of creaks in the floorboard, the water pressure is super low, maybe there's a leak, the boiler cuts out temperamentally, you can't open the window or something, whatever it might be. And the reason why you don't end up in that situation, because the last thing you want to do is have guests in the property and they're the ones who are discovering these issues, and then it looks bad on you and you're going to get a negative review because of it. So you need to do thorough checks on the property beforehand, and that kind of starts with the viewing to ensure the property is in a good enough state for you to actually run this as a short-term rental. I always think back to the time when one of my first Airbnbs I took on, we signed contracts, got everything across the line, paid rent, deposit, all of that sort of stuff. And then we went to the property, the toilet wasn't flushing. And then there was an issue with the shower. We had to change the shower hose. There was another issue with something in the kitchen. And at that point, the landlord was like, whoa, hold on. You guys said to me, you're going to take care of all the minor maintenances. This is on you. I'm not touching anything within the property. And we were like, sugar. Like, we've kind of shot ourselves in the foot a little bit here, because if we had checked this beforehand, we could have said, well, no, hold on. This has got to be in a good enough state before we take it on. We're not confident enough. We're not happy to actually sign contracts on this deal yet because the property is not in the correct standard. So we kind of could have pushed back on that, potentially could have avoided that deal. And we ended up having to put probably maybe another £1,000 into bringing that property up to standard through maintenance. So again, big mistake. Now, on the other hand, because I said this point had two parts, there's a side where you need to actually verify and check the ownership of the property or the landlord or person that you're dealing with. And what I mean by that is there's actually a few scams that go on. Believe it or not, you may not think it happens, but people pretend to be landlords of properties to try and rent out properties that essentially don't belong to them. They don't own it, they've got nothing to do with it, and they take first month's rent and deposit from people. And that's the exact trap that we fell into. So we ended up paying first month's rent and deposit to someone who had nothing to do with this property. We thought we'd taken on a great deal in London. It was amazing, came furnished, and turns out it was a complete and utter scam. I'm going to make a full video on this in the future, on exactly how this kind of played out, so you can kind of see from the beginning how it came about, because you may be thinking, well, you're a bit of an idiot. I mean, yeah, we probably were a little bit naive in some regards, but at the same time, it kind of blindsided us a little bit. And it happened to a lot of other people as well, this particular scam. So what you need to do is ensure and you verify the ownership of this property, and ensuring that you're actually dealing with the correct landlord and the legal owner of the property, not just taking someone's word for it. And again, when you're first starting your journey, because you're so grateful and happy you'll be able to take on a deal, you just kind of take on anything. You're kind of a little bit rash. Maybe you don't do enough due diligence and checks on the property beforehand. So you need to be in checking the condition of the property, the ownership of the property from the landlord, and also making sure it's fully compliant. Does it have like the electrical safety certificates? Does it have gas safety certificate? All these things. What's the EPC rating as well? And does it have that? Because that could even be invalid and expired, and that's something you need to have in place. So just ensuring you have all of these documents, ensuring that everything's above board and legit before you sign contracts is paramount. Then the fourth mistake I made was not pitching correctly. Looking back, I wasted so many months on end just trying to get deals because I was speaking to landlords and agents in the complete wrong way. I was overcomplicating it. I was waffling, just trying to break down rent to rent as a model, how I was going to make profit by putting on Airbnb and stuff like that. But when you start mentioning words like rent to rent, Airbnb, it just creates so much risk and uncertainty in the landlord, the agent's head, and they don't want anything to do with it. And you just can't get deals that way. So it's so important that you have a clear framework and a pitch in terms of communicating your value to be able to get these deals. So you need to understand how you can offer a solution to the landlord's problems that they have, how you're going to be of value, how you're also going to deliver that value, and also deliver on all the promises that you're making. When I was getting hit with certain objections from a landlord, like how you're going to be able to guarantee my rent, how you're going to ensure the property is well maintained and looked after, I just want to deal with the tenants directly, how am I going to know who's inside? I just didn't really know what I was saying. And at that point, I'm kind of freezing, I'm stumbling. And then it was just creating so much more uncertainty. They didn't trust that I knew what I was doing, and I was just losing out on deals. So what you need to understand is how you can clearly lead on these conversations, deliver your pitch, deliver your value, and offer your services, and position yourself in such a way where you're offering so much value to these landlords and agents that they would love to be able to work with you. And that's how you build long-term relationships where you can acquire more properties down the line. Everyone I know who has a successful property business or Airbnb business, they have good relationships with landlords and agents, because that's how you acquire deals. You don't need to have contact with millions of people, but if you've got a pipeline of just a couple contacts who can feed you properties or are going to come to you as soon as a property becomes available because they know your value, they know what you provide, then it's just a great way of growing your portfolio. You don't have to worry about doing so much cold outreach. Like, I'm fortunate enough to be in a position now where I don't need to go on to Rightmove and Open Rent every day to find new deals, because the landlords that I work with, they want to give me more properties. If a tenant was to move out one of their others, they're going to come to me straight away, offer me that, and I'll take it on. So initially, understanding your pitch, getting that nailed down and acquiring the first couple of deals, That's what's so important, because once you've done it the once and have done it a few times and you've got a few properties under your belt, it's going to become so much easier to acquire more deals later down the line. And then that kind of leads on to the fifth mistake that I made, was not getting any kind of guidance or a mentor. When I started 4 years ago, I was under the assumption of, oh, well, there's plenty of stuff online. I can figure things out myself. Why do I need to pay a mentor when I can just find out everything I can with a few Google searches or on YouTube and stuff? But what you come to realize is there's so much stuff that happens in this business that's not spoken about online. There's situations that pop up that you would never anticipate for. And in those situations, you're scratching your head thinking, what the hell do I do here? So that was a really big mistake, because had I got a mentor who would been able to kind of guide me or give me advice in certain situations, again, all these losing money on certain deals, not taking deposits and stuff, all that would have been avoided. And I probably would have had maybe 100 properties by now. When I look back, it probably delayed my growth for months by just not having someone I could kind of lean on or ask a few questions. Now I've got a completely different mindset in business. I think if you're trying to do something within business, you should learn from someone who's already been there and done it, or is in a situation that, or in the position that you want to get to yourself. Because there may be simple things that you don't know, like how to organize contracts and things to include in there, or how to calculate your numbers and profitability. But then there's also little things that I'd never thought of before I took on a deal. It was like, oh, how do I set up council tax, and what's the best way to do that to ensure I don't get charged double, or I get put on business rates where I'm paying more money for things now. Like all these things aren't spoken about online. Or how do I get around the 90-day rule in London? There wasn't much online and people speaking about it. All these kind of hurdles I ran into, I'd had to figure things out on my own. And that was a real big mistake. So yeah, those are my 5 top mistakes that I made starting out in my journey. Hopefully this video saves you a lot of time, stress and money along your journey. And if you are serious about scaling your Airbnb business and you want some support, there's going to be a link down below where you can book in a meeting with myself. We can have a chat and see how I can help you. But if you did find this video valuable, please drop a like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.